Good evening. Welcome in. Welcome to Occidental Center for the Arts Literary Series and our March book event this evening with our beloved poet and friend, Elizabeth Herron. My name is Suze Pringle Cohan. I'm privileged to chair OCA's awesome literary committee and to host this evening's event. For more than a decade, our center has been the cultural cornerstone of our community, offering world-class music, dance, theater, written word, and the visual arts. And Elizabeth noted in a recent conversation, the arts are powerful instruments of change because it is through the arts that we change hearts. Well said. Since we had to temporarily close our doors a year ago, we've been grateful that through the ingenuity of our fabulous executive director, Tina Marchetti, and the science of technology, we've been able to carry on virtually via Zoom and YouTube. We've had 5 virtual variety shows, another one coming up next weekend, with fabulous musicians from all over the world, interspersed with some theater and poetry. We've had virtual gallery shows, and we've continued our book launches. Tonight, we're celebrating our 6th since last summer. So yay for us, we're surviving. And we hope to reopen our center soon and look forward to seeing you all then in person. Tonight, we're offering 2 viewing options. OCA members and guests have the opportunity to join us here in the Zoom room to enjoy the presentation and join in the Q&A via Zoom's chat feature. Non-members are going to be able to watch the event via live stream YouTube and hear the Q&A as it unfolds. Tonight, we're honored to have with us our dear friend, Elizabeth Herron. She's the author of 4 poetry chapbooks, and a previous collection of poems, Desire Being Full of Distance, as well as a collection of short fiction. Her poems and articles have appeared in Parabola, Orion, Center for Humans and Nature, Reflections, Free State, and Columbia Review. Grants and awards sustaining her work have come from the Foundation for Deep Ecology, the Mesa Refuge for Writers, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Known for her collaborative performances with musicians and movement artists, her book-length poem, The Poet's House, was written to accompany Bruce Johnson's Poetry House sculpture. She writes articles centered on art and ecology, imagination and empathy, and the importance of nature in our physical and spiritual well-being. She's been focused on climate since 2003, when the Society for Conservation Biology announced global warming as the greatest threat to all species. This evening, Elizabeth has created a beautiful video that blends her poetry with the visuals of shape, color, and light to invoke a trance state as you listen. The photos you see are softened by design so as not to present any visual competition to the music of the poems. The images are there to give the eye something to rest on, or you can simply close your eyes or gaze outside as you listen, your choice. The video will be about 20 minutes. We will then open up to a discussion with Elizabeth about her poetry and her environmental work. I have some questions for her, and we invite the Zoomers to pose their questions in the chat room. If you're unfamiliar with this technique, simply click on the chat room icon beneath your screen, and a column will appear to the right of the screen. Type your question there, and I will read it to Elizabeth. Those watching via YouTube will hear all the questions and Elizabeth's responses, the entire conversation. By the way, this is all being recorded, so if you have friends unable to come tonight, let them know, and they can simply visit OCA's website and view all our previous events from this and last year. And we encourage you to buy Insistent Grace, Elizabeth's collection from tonight, so that you can revisit the poetry and read everything in the collection. Elizabeth urges you to purchase the book from the independent publisher, Fernwood Press, to further support their work. You'll see the website in the chat box, and Tina is also posting it on the screen later. If you're pressed for time, you can buy it on Amazon, but we urge you to buy it directly from Fernwood for obvious reasons. And if you'd like Elizabeth to sign your copy, look for her over the coming year as centers begin to open up to in-person events, or contact her directly. She's also generously making a donation to OCA for our evening tonight. Thank you, Elizabeth, and many bows for your tireless work on helping our planet not only survive, but heal and thrive. So now, as Susan Page Tillett, Executive Director, Mesa Refuge, invites us, let Elizabeth be our guide, leading us away from the overwhelming, specific present into an elemental time and space where earth, sky, light, night, and creatures of all sizes invite us to join the dance. At a time when the natural world is so immediately threatened, Elizabeth reminds us what it is we love so much about it. So sit back now or lie down in a comfortable place and enjoy the peaceful music of Elizabeth's voice as she brings us into this primal and peaceful world of her poetry.
Well, here we are at the gate. Let's open it up and enter the world of poetry. Migration. If my words can be as honest as desire, they will go to you like a flow of caribou over ice. They will lick the air like a migration of wild geese, spill like salmon upstream, words of a primal instinct, pulling you into an urgent journey, knowing, though we know not where, we're going home. Who remembers? Stones beneath the hawthorn, rounded and whaled up amid the sea of yellow leaves. Who remembers the songs of stones, the river that rolled them, or the hawthorn whose berries healed hearts for generations? Who remembers the songs of pale alder, favorite of beaver, yellow willow, whose roots make baskets fine enough to hold water, or red-stemmed dogwood and wild currant, where sparrow, warbler, and wren flutter and feed. Canada geese glide down to the winter pond at dusk, the marshy, muddy smell of home. Heart by wing, the geese know where they belong. Listen deep, in the quiet beyond thought. Ancient stones, creeks, rivers, roots, wings, and open branches will sing you home. Like longing. At home, I am wild in my privacy, eating avocado with lemon and olive oil, naked in the garden, digging potatoes, my hands dark with the damp earth. My skin smells of sun and dry sweat, spicy like a summer field flower. I brush my hair and pale grass seeds fall. I keep all the doors and windows open, the night invited. Desire is a green fruit, like longing, but not as blue. Lake trout. Those northern salvelinus mate only on stormy autumn nights. Low in the liquid layers like black glass, the male rubs the rocks clean to lure the female in the glistening dark. And I dream of it, the white shaft of lightning, a moon and vast clouds, his iridescent scales, the elegant caudal fin she fans as she waits, the way they half sink together, instinct and ecstasy in that cold place, below and apart from the world of human desire, surfacing through sleep. Fay Creek. The perfect tracks of doe and fawn follow the bank under the overhang of green, where the creek ripples with weightless water skates in a broidery of light on stones and water rattled with reflections. The doe's print, larger with a slight splay, the fawn's delicate points where the tips meet. Crouched over the tracks, I think of the fawn I found on the road, still warm, her limp neck no bigger than my forearm. I think of Wolfgang Leib gathering pollen, sifting it through linen into heaps of gold, bees and honey, the months the fawn grew in a condensation of light in a watery world of breath and heartbeat. Here by the creek, the world receives itself, leaf and stone, lichen and branch, catkin and alder cone. Steelhead fry flick past, half disguised by bay leaves mirrored on the water or soggy and dark on the gravel bottom. What silence, what tender listening caught the fawn with her last breath, gently as pollen collected from a blossom. fires of October. I can imagine how each breath takes in the light and swirls it through the billions of cells in my body, how each cell ignites with oxygen in the chemical joy of essential existence, how it rises in the wings of cinnamon teal lifting off the marsh to begin their migration, how deep in the icy waters of Arctic lakes the char glimmer with the combustion of spawning. But what is it I must do as the daylight narrows? Tell me, I whisper to the deepening dark, how to cradle that spark, to keep the fires of the mind steadily burning, ready to open their fan of flame the way the maple spreads its crimson leaves across October. What ancient ritual song am I meant to sing? Tell me, how to be the open hearth, the hollow waiting, to hold the mystery of this blaze, to be this radiance, even to be ashes. Initiation. Enter the land between certainties. Repeat the spell of renunciation. The words fly loose like your hair, the air laced with them, the bay laurel bunched on the hills roll toward you like sheep in a storm. You feel dizzy when their oily scent shoves up the canyon. Near the creek, you find the right rock and lean your head against its granite flank. The water ripples with the rush of song from the willows, the dogwood, the wild azalea, the stutter of leafless alders against the colorless sky, where all the blue, all the gray has settled in your heart, pressing you down, 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 through leaves into topsoil, through the mycorrhizal web with its 1,000 thin white fingers. You descend through earth into bedrock, through layers of time, pressed between crystals into the molten core of the most ancient, reduced to pattern, as the star is in the flower, as the flower is in the seed. You do not know who you are. When you return, you will meet all that remains of you. Only then will you know what you have become. Animal. On the hump of rock between the little gulches that drop off either side where the scat collects, I sit and look at it, pleased to find this evidence of animal. I look over the lake. Animal eyes, what would you see? Listen to the wind. Animal ears, what would you hear? I break open your scat to see what you eat, finding only the alfalfa odor of baling and barns. No bones, no small claw, tiny tooth or mat of fur. No seed or pit, as in the bear scat south of here along the Tuolumne. You will find your scent released afresh from my search for your name. Marmot, you give me comfort in the solitude that scours me bare. At night, I nudge the logs into last heat and undress by the fire. For a moment, I am something else in the quivering light, with eyes and ears and teeth of my own. October moon. That October moon, coming up like a collapsed pumpkin, overripe as I. October again, happy in spite of the lopsided way I climb out of my bed. Annie's field. Annie's field is empty now. She foundered after eating green, lay in the rain till dawn. Neighbors noticed she was down. I might see her dapple-gray ghost in the sprawl of mist and moonlight if I should stop at the rusty tangled barbed wire where she stood on the beaten bare ground season after season, flies buzzing at her milky eye in summer, in rain and winter frost frozen on her coat and mane matted with mud. She might canter toward the trees as she was before she lost the luster hope brings. If you can love something for what it was, I do. But I keep walking up the darkened lane to throw my hand with the living, gamblers who pitch their hearts to chance, hard-drinking men at the bar, the tomcat yowling from the yard, disgraced as any lover in his ache. I keep walking, past the blind light of the neighbor's barn, past where the wren has fled from the safe shadows of her nest, past the memory of Annie waiting by the fence. You can love something for what it was, and for the blue patience made of loneliness. Mid-March spawners. At the end of the deer trail down to the water, under the 3 alders that fell last winter, in a pool on the far side of the gravel bar, a density of shadow, a steelhead salmon, in and out of shallows. He skates fast over gravel, twists sideways, a scimitar half in air, sleek and limber. He darts back to sidle up beside the hen holding at the top of the pool. He threads her like a needle, over and back, as if he could stitch himself to her. Camouflaged with dappled light, speckled and smooth, she's hidden till she turns and whips her body so she shines like a polished pan under the water, shakes herself, unfurling silver light that makes the gravel roots and drifting saffron bay leaves pale. The buck shudders beside her, swings away, loops out over the gravel bar to a patch of sun, glistening dorsal fins straight up. He gapes. He's flying, curved clean out of water, chasing off a young jack that darts in and hangs around in the riffle waiting to steal the hen. He's lithe and quick, not more than 6 or 7 inches, golden, without the sea-run gun-barrel blue of the buck. The hen stays put, hidden again, till she tilts, gleams and quivers, undulating fast, all light gathered to her, then rights herself, uses her tail to work the gravel. I follow the jack upstream, stop back later. The buck is all I see drifting down. Then, hopping the cobble, he twists, shoots the riffle, skitters up the shallows to the pond like a lover going back to smell the sheets. Rain. My friend, let us lie down in the rain. Water inside, water outside. Tell me again how it was when the salmon came up the rivers. What rivers were they? The Eel, the Russian, the Navarro, Big River, the Gualala, the Mad, all the rivers. You'd see these V's the shape of an arrow moving upstream because it ran off their dorsal fins and left a wake widening behind them. And was there a V for each fish? Each one made a V. You'd see several V's together and you'd know it was the salmon. What salmon were they? What were their names? Steelhead, Coho, King, Micus, Kitsuch, Tsawicha. I've heard older stories, how the river was a single roiling thing, thick with them from bank to bank, thousands surging home. We love the rain. It remembers our fishness, how once we were water, how we'd make a V. We stand under the overhang, looking out at the storm, swinging down from the Gulf of Alaska. 2 fish, underwater, swimming upstream in the rain, maybe like this. When we thrash over the riffle, our dorsal fins exposed, rain wet, river wet. We are fish, river, water, swimming the world into its birth salt sea, remembering.
Ah, Elizabeth, that was so beautiful. I find myself sighing. Wow.
Thank you, Suze. Yeah.
Whoa. So we have had some technical difficulties, and the YouTube feature, Tina has attempted more than 11 times to get the live stream YouTube working, and has not been succeeding.
I'm so sorry.
I feel really terrible. It's out of our control. I guess it's a tech. I don't know.
I don't know, but these things happen. These things happen. And it's all a learning experience. So, but it went pretty well, I think.
Well, it's being recorded, as is this now Q&A time.
Okay.
So those who want to see it on YouTube after the event, it will be available. It's just not available right now, I guess, for the YouTube viewers. So we're just those who are here in the Zoom room. We're all here together, and we're going to have a conversation with Elizabeth. And unfortunately, those who were counting on the YouTube will have to watch this when the recording is completed.
Yeah.
And just our deepest apologies. We just this hasn't occurred before, so
yeah, it's all new. Trying to cope with one thing and another. So I understand.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know if Brendan and his friends were able to get in.
He was. We won't worry about it.
Okay. Yeah. So I received some questions through the OCA's committee as I sent out a query. What questions would you like to ask Elizabeth of her poetry and the source of it and the other very vital things that you're involved with in your life? So I'm going to read you some of those, and then I will go to the chat room and take a look at some questions that might some of you might be posing. But I'll start with this one from Barbara Bear. How has dance influenced your poetry, rhythms, expressions of words through the body?
I love that question because they're so connected. They really are. And, you know, I think with both dance and poetry, I contact that part of myself that really is so centered on rhythm and that is really quite musical. So they feed each other. And, you know, I studied choreography with Claire Porter. Some of you know Claire, she lives in New York now. But from her, I really learned to play with a piece and to kind of tune the same piece for several different pieces of music. So to move the same movement pattern to a whole range of music, I might do the movement pattern to some fragment of Brahms or something of the Beatles or some electronic music. And what I learned from that was how much outer rhythms could inform the way that where I took a movement. So I don't know quite how that connected to my poetry, but I think all my writing is really influenced by a sense of the rhythms of the outer world, whether it's in a really conscious way, the way when I worked with dance, or whether it's in a kind of intuitive, ongoing, continuous relationship to the natural world, which is so much about rhythms. It's a whole series of nested, intersecting, interacting rhythms. That's what, you know, that's the way the natural world works. So,
well, it was really evident in the poem that the last one that was in the video of the mating. That was so completely evident, the rhythms in that one.
Yeah, really. How about the fish?
Yeah, quite astounding. Yeah.
Gonna stitch himself to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real profound experience and privilege to be able to see animals in their native habitat and to watch their behavior. I'm hoping our fish populations will survive this drought impacting the salmon return. Anyway, that's a good question. Thanks to Barbara. Yeah.
And this probably ties in to this, but you speak of the importance of the music of your poetry, invoking the trance state both for you and the reader. With that in mind, can you talk about the making of the video? How did you choose the images?
Another good question. Well, my intention, as I mentioned to you at one point, because at first the impression is, oh my gosh, the video's out of focus. But in fact, it was meant to be a place where your eyes would rest and they would be engaged enough by the shapes and colors, but not be able to create in their minds an alternative narrative or any kind of story that might have gotten in the way of the listening to the poem. So I chose images that were primarily about shape and light and shadow, and secondarily about color. I think as I watched it through this time with you, which is like, I think maybe the second time I've watched it all the way through, we worked to create it for this event, as you know. And I want to just say, I think the tail end of the video, we clipped it a little bit, so we missed the acknowledgement that I wanted to give to Brendan for all his ongoing support and tremendous help using the recording equipment, which was new to me, but also to David Alosi, who's just the most wonderful tech guy and dear friend. And he fitted together the video, actual video of me walking, along with all of the photographs, which we sent him. I sent them, Brendan helped me to get them together in groups to be sent to David's Dropbox. So I just want to acknowledge them because they helped me so much to execute my vision, really. Because so this was my idea, was because of the possibility of technological interruptions during the reading, I wanted to pre-record it because my own internet connection, I had a lot of trouble with it over the last year. And I felt that I wanted the music of each poem to have the integrity of its wholeness. And I was afraid a little computer, a little ripple or a Zoom kind of, something in the middle that threw off the reading flash would really destroy the drive of the poem, the musical drive of the poem. And I have very strong feelings about that. So for that reason, I wanted to pre-record it rather than reading it live, as you guys, when you were very
and really good ideas, it turned out, huh?
well, it probably was, yeah.
Very, very
good. Have had, but it's not. It's just one of those things, and it's life, life is happens when you had other plans. So,
well, that was very, as we have seen, that was a really excellent idea that you did that, and because it was completely uninterrupted and was just stunningly beautiful. I have another few more questions, and I'm also looking at the chat box.
That one.
Could you tell us more about your collaboration with Bruce Johnson and the Poetry House? And that's my kind of personal question. And Bruce, is he here this evening with us?
He might have tried. We don't.
Might have tried. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit more about that collaboration and how that came to be? It became a favorite place for me to go when it was up at Paradise Ridge at the winery. And I know it's not there any longer, but it was a mythical destination for my walks from down below. A friend and I would walk up there specifically, not only to look at the other sculptures in the garden, but to go to the Poetry House. And
so. I think I saw you there one time. I'm not sure, but I knew you went up there. It was a fact, for anybody who hasn't seen it, it's, Bruce has it at the studio now up at Seaview, but it should be in a place where people can, go see it, some kind of public garden or something. But what happened was Bruce told me about the concept, but he actually, and of course I lived up that way in a little cabin that I had built years ago. And so I knew Bruce and Margie, and but Bruce somehow went to the Zen Center on Sonoma Mountain and saw a note that I had put into the guest book because I used to sit there in their Zendo. And so he liked what I'd written, some little poem. So he contacted me and said, would I like to do something with him? And I was thrilled, but I was also probably a little intimidated at first because it was such a major project with such a beautiful concept. And I said yes, because I loved the idea, but how and what, I just didn't know. And I think it was almost 6 months later, at least. It was just finished, it was when I was teaching, and we had just finished final exams, and I was headed home. I remember I was driving and I was in my car, and it was the first time that my mind had been able to really have space, because I'd been working hard teaching and then the rush of finals and all. And my mind was just blank for a moment. And then the words just came, the poet's house. And I had this instant vision of how I would do it, that the world is, this world I love is the poet's house, and everyone in it, and all of the lives being lived out. My vision was so grandiose. It was almost frightening, but I didn't think of that at all at the time. I rushed home and I called and I left a message on Bruce's machine and I said, I've got it. I have the idea, and it wasn't until probably a month or two later when I had been working on it, because then I started writing every morning. I would write, and I knew that what I was doing couldn't be put on the computer. There was just this very powerful sense of the necessity to be faithful to the hand and the connection between the hand and the heart. But it wasn't until a couple of months that I was writing away every day on it, and which took a long time. It took about 9 months to write it, or maybe more. I don't remember now. It took 9 straight days to copy it out the last time I hand wrote it out. And I mean, that's working like 5 hours a day, 9 days. So it's long, that was another grandiose notion. I just had to do what it told me to do. I didn't think about it from an outer perspective. Anyway, Bruce was just a total dream to work with. And I think we were both just sort of flabbergasted by what happened, because he certainly hadn't expected anything of this magnitude, and neither had I. But it was wonderful. And then, so I was going to say, it wasn't until a few months later that I realized, oh, I was thinking, for somehow my mind turned Poetry House around into the Poet's House. And that was the key that opened the door to the book for me. It opened the door to the poem, was just that odd I don't know, the turning of the words sort of upside down in a way. And Bruce didn't say anything. He didn't mention it. And it was like 2 months after I'd been working on it, I said, oh, Bruce, I just realized I kind of upended the name of the sculpture and was thinking it was the Poet's House, which is how the vision came to me. So it was just a delight to work with him, and he's so accepting and affirming. And it turned out to be, a huge chunk of my life, working on that and building it. And I still feel, the work evolves. I had, shortly before I received Bruce's invitation, I had finished doing something, sort of an accidental piece of work I called Report, which was by looking at what was then the back page of the B section of the Press Democrat every morning, where the weather and the tides and the weather, the winds, the tides, the phases of the moon, the planets, that's all on one page now, and I usually only look at it now in the Sunday paper, and I make a record of it in my journal. But I had been looking at it every day, and I would write this ongoing sort of poetic commentary. And when I finished it, I had a poem, a chapbook length poem, maybe 25 pages. And that had preceded, which was a one long poem published as Report. And I had done that right before Bruce extended his invitation. I think that, in a way, unconsciously prepared me for what happened with the Poet's House and how that came to be. And subsequently, that evolved into yet another work, which is the manuscript that I'm so eager to get out into the world next, which is the climate manuscript. And I'm republishing Report, and in that, amid many newer poems, including one called Last Report, which was a recreation of that same kind of what's happening with the tides and the weather and so on now. And having done that for probably a full year or so, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, to see how it's changed now, to see that the winds have changed. They've changed direction and strength, and the wave heights are higher, and things are changing on Mother Earth. So, long answer to your question.
Oh, but this is what we love. I have a kind of a side question coming in from Susan Bono.
Oh, Susan.
Yeah.
Hey, Susan.
And I do want to talk more about your ongoing work with the Society for Conservation Biology and Extraction.
Yes, the extraction
published.
project.
But Susan's question: your poems feel so complete. They close so naturally. How do you know when a poem has ended?
Wow, Susan, that's a tremendously reassuring comment from you. I can't help wanting to get closure. I think it was recently, I think Brandon and I, or my friend Jack Crimmins and I were talking about art and what makes you do art. And I said, well, I don't think it has, for me, it doesn't have a lot to do with what happens to the work later. It's not the publishing so much that matters, but for me, I have a very powerful drive for closure. And sometimes it can make me a little bit neurotic, I suppose, just pushing all the time, pushing to finish. And of course, you can't finish in life. Like on your tombstone, it'll say, got it all done, died anyway. So, but I guess there is that search. The poem is a search. I want to understand something. And so I write to try to understand something and to get to a resting place with it. And it usually requires my learning something, my finding out something that I didn't know before. The poem is not finished if I knew or it's no good if I already knew all the things I want to know from it. I have to try to find something that I didn't know. And once I find it, then of course you have to be careful that you don't, I like to work with rhythm and a certain amount of internal rhyme that is often so subtle that you don't really know it's there, but it can give you a false sense of closure. So I have to watch. I don't worry about that so much anymore, but there was a time when I thought, oh, gee, if there wasn't a rhyme there in that last, couplet or something, I might feel like it wasn't finished. I guess maybe there's more to do. But like some poems, Annie's Field, which I did read this time in this reading about the old horse that lived in the neighborhood. That poem is one of the poems that was the most difficult for me to write. And it took a long time to get those last lines. You can love something for what it was, and for the blue patience made of loneliness. I can't explain what those lines mean either. And that's another funny thing about a poem, and Susan, I'm sure, knows that the resting place is not necessarily, poems are not about logic. They have their own logic, and it's not philosophical. It's not, by that I mean, it's because philosophy really is kind of like algebra, and the poem doesn't work that way. It has its own logic and its own rules, and it tells me when it's finished. Really, that's when I know. And when the poem feels, it tells me you can take a breath now, you're done, sort of. That makes any sense. I don't suppose that makes a lot of sense, but they do have a sort of hermetic quality, I know, Susan, and some poets really, for some states of mind, that's not very accurate. The way the mind works, it doesn't finish the thought process. For instance, that I was reading Tony Hoagland talking about Bob Hass, And he talks about Bob's fidelity to his own inner complexity, the complexity of his thinking and the contrariness of it, so that you have a thought and then your mind corrects it, and thinks off in another direction. And that's another whole kind of poem. Wonderful stuff there, though, with Bob.
Wow. Wonderful, wonderful answer. Yes, Susan. I know we're getting towards time, and those who are on a timeline, I totally understand if you need to leave the meeting. However, I do want to ask Elizabeth a little bit about your current work with the Society for Conservation Biology and the recently published book Extraction. Can you speak a little bit about that? And those who do need to leave, thank you so much for coming. I'm really grateful that you came to join us. And we have more coming down the pike this spring, more poetry. Barbara Ganella has written a book about Occidental and chock full of history. And we have Shakespeare Everywhere with Jean Heglin coming up in May. She will be hosting that, and lots going on. But anyway, if Elizabeth, if you might talk more, if you have the time, about what you're doing now with that.
Yeah.
With those concerns.
Well, thanks to everyone who tuned in, and I'd love feedback from anyone who wants to send me an email or give me a buzz. So yeah, the Society for Conservation Biology was founded by E.O. Wilson, who's the wonderful author of Consilience and Biophilia. He is the one who first used that term, biophilia. And so I don't, not working directly with the society, but I do have biologist friends who are conservationists and geneticist friends that are conservationists. It's a wonderful world of very committed scientists who are part of the Society for Conservation Biology, because that gives you a perspective. That's a very special perspective, and I have deep respect for the minds that come together around that from all over the world. But in 2000, I think it was 2003, because I think it was about that long ago, and I'm trying to think which house I was in at the time, and they made an announcement that, because conservation biology is a lot about the preservation of species, but they came out with an announcement that the greatest threat to all species was global warming. And I realized at that point that, and I had been thinking about this because I was doing watershed work that had come about because of the Dunsmuir spill years ago. That I had felt called to go and witness that spill. And then I got more deeply involved at that point in watershed preservation. And from there, I got interested in fish and in the preservation of salmon species. But when I heard that the conservation biology folks had said climate before anything, if we don't save the climate, we can't save anything, including ourselves. I thought, okay, I have to shift directions here and open my eyes a little bit about, see what's going on. And right around that time, Anne Hancock approached me and said, we're getting together a little group. I want to do some nonprofit work. She had a history of working with nonprofits, and she's a terrific go-getter person, a wonderful person. And she said, would you like to be on the board? And so I joined the board of the founding board for what was then the Climate Protection Campaign, which is now the Climate Center, and is responsible for Sonoma Clean Power being in existence and pursuing that rollout throughout California. Climate work. And then around that time too, I had begun to notice these radical changes in natural systems. And all of us who've lived in the county a while, we know how much our weather patterns have changed. And we certainly didn't have to worry about the fires in the old days the way we do now. So that's sort of what kind of shot me off in this completely other direction. And I'm so glad you asked about extraction, because I received recently the beautiful big book, and I might have held it up and showed it to you guys. It's Extraction, and it's the catalog of projects and exhibitions that, and all of these participating artists from all over the world, painters, photographers, writers, galleries, and all geared toward a shift in consciousness that we believe the arts can bring about, and maybe nothing else can. And so the arts are reaching out through these projects that are going to just roll out all over the world. And the catalog of the projects and exhibitions is so amazing that Brendan and I were just talking this evening about, that we would love to, make that available to more people. Like, it just occurs to me we could give one to the library. People could see it. Artists that don't know about this project. It's founded by Ed Daub, who unfortunately passed away before he could see the incredible fruition of his work. And Peter Kosh, who's the founder of Codex, the artist book fair that happens annually. And those guys got their heads together and they dreamed up this amazing project. And it's really a call to artists everywhere. But there's a wonderful website, Extraction, Art on the Edge of the Abyss. Go there, it'll blow your mind. It's just, and participate if you can. So I know we need to think about folks getting on with their lives, and so we probably have to stop. But I just want to thank the Occidental Center for the Arts for making this event possible, inviting me to come and share my work and talk about my work. It's just a wonderful opportunity. I thank you so much, you and Suze and Tina and all the gang over there. Thank you.
It's been an honor to be in conversation with you leading up to this, planning it. And I do want everyone who's here in the Zoom room, before we leave, please tell your friends that it will be available. It's being recorded. And when the recording ends, as we say goodbye to each other, it will be available on YouTube to view in its entirety. So my biggest apologies to those who tried and couldn't see the live stream, but it will be definitely available and ongoing at our website. So, and also you can go to YouTube and click on OCA and be able to watch it. So I'm very sorry for this glitch beyond our control. But I just thank you all who came this evening
Yes,
to hear this conversation. And you're very inspiring, Elizabeth. I definitely am going to go right to Art on the Edge of the Abyss. I want to learn more about this subject.
I'm so glad. All right. Thanks, Tina. Thanks to
Well, thank you. Thank you to Tina, who's not being seen here, but who is behind the, in the wings, orchestrating all of this. And we couldn't do this at all without her. So I really thank you, Tina. And I'm very sorry for the problems we had, but we shall overcome.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.